This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 535 for December 3rd of 2020. Henrik Fisker is back with a radical EV business plan. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Hyundai, Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Hello, Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing well. I know I always say that, but it's actually true.
Well, that's good. You know, I was a little off my pins because we were only off 1 week, and it seems like such a long time since we've had a show.
It does. And you know why? Because so much just happens in this industry. It's like there's a mountain of news to go through.
That's just unbelievable. And, you know, the really sad thing is that nothing of note happened in history on this day. and then I checked to see if maybe last Thursday was a day that we missed something that was startling. Nothing.
But you are wrong, Vasilash-san. There is a historical marker for today's date. Today is the 10th anniversary of the Nissan Leaf.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
10 years old. There you go.
So you got me on that one. So
I only know that because we had that in Autoline Daily today. Otherwise, I would have never known.
Well, we're going to be talking about things that are of an electric nature.
Yes, we are. In fact, we should let everybody know who's joining us today. Chase Drum. Come on in here. There he is. Hey, Chase.
Hey, great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you with Grid Connections and also doing some work for us here at Autoline. And we know that you're an EV aficionado.
I think that's a safe way to put it. Some people have said I'm an expert. I'm trying to be humble, but no, pleasure to be here and looking forward to the conversation today. So thank you.
Yeah, great having you on the show. Well, let's bring in our special guest, Henrik Fisker from Fisker Inc. Henrik, thanks so much for joining us today. Great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here. Good to see everybody.
We've got so much we ought to talk to you about. Of course, we want to talk about your new effort with your electric car, but we want to talk about the cars themselves. I wanted to ask you about your business plan. We've got a bunch of questions from viewers already. They want to know about Magna. I think we can talk about design safely with somebody like you. So I'm not sure where to start. Gary, why don't you kick it off?
All right. So here, Rick, I want to ask you this. I was looking at your Twitter profile, and you describe yourself as husband, father, risk-taking, innovation-loving, protocol-challenging designer and entrepreneur who turns dreams into reality and never gives up. Break that down for us.
There was a lot of stuff on there. Let me start with the last one, never give up. You know, I think being in the automotive industry, especially as an entrepreneur, that's a must. You know, you have to go through so many hurdles. It's an incredible, difficult industry, complicated, high price of entrance and everything else. There's been a lot of changes to this industry in the last 10 years that's somehow changed, the fact that it's actually possible to start an electric vehicle company. It's still not easy, still high barriers of entry. But, then you try to balance that with being also a human being. Yes, I'm a father to two grown-up kids. One has nothing to do with the car industry and the other has a lot to do with the car industry. I'm a husband to a wonderful, amazing wife. And I'm very happy she actually works in the business as CFO. Otherwise, I would probably never see her. And, protocol challenging, I think I like to kind of do things different and challenging sort of what people think should be. And I think we're really trying to do that specifically on two fronts. One, with the business model of our new company, Fisker Inc., and the second, with the type of vehicles we're going to bring out and how much sustainability we're adding into them. So that's kind of, I guess, summarizing all of that. I'm sure I forgot a couple of the things in there.
Henrik, let's go back to what you said there. Never give up. I so admire people like you who get kicked down and come right back. Take us a little bit through what went through your head. You know, you started the first car company over a decade ago. For a variety of reasons, it didn't work out. Most people would have put their tail between their legs and just slink off into the darkness. What was going through your head at that point, and what led you to come back and do it again?
You know, I don't know how a boxer feel when they get a knockout and they lie there, you know, and everybody's looking. And, you know, you might talk about the team. You might talk about, you know, did you train enough and who was your trainer? But at the end of the day, is that person lying up there everybody's looking at? Now, maybe one difference with that boxer is I think my head was a little clearer to a certain extent. But it's, you know, for me, it was not about, it was never a question about getting back up. It was really, I guess, a matter of, you know, when do you go up and what do you do? You know, I felt like I was born to make cars. You know, I probably don't know how to do much else in my life than that, at least not very good. I can throw a, you know, steak on the barbecue and a few things like that. But, you know, so I went out and just kind of had to get a clear mind, did a whole bunch of different projects, did a motorcycle, designed, you know, and a couple of specialty cars with, you know, a couple of good friends. And eventually I just sat down and sort of thought, I have all this knowledge. So I was one of the early kind of pioneers out there working on electric vehicles before it got cool. And I wanted to bring that knowledge back. And then on top of that, there had been a huge shift from when Fiskar Automotive originally started in 2007 to, at the time, 2016, where in the meantime, you had ride hailing. You had kind of the whole concept of probably a diverse mobility in terms of different concepts of mobility. And then most of it for me was really seeing how young people, and we can argue the reasons why, but how a lot of the young people really don't have the same emotional connection to the mechanical part of the automobile that we grew up with. And of course, part of it is that today a young person's, you know, first drive in a car without their parents is probably in the backseat of an Uber, which they called with a smartphone. And it's most likely not that exciting a vehicle, you know, so that's their first experience, which is totally different than if you yourself got in the car and you hear the downshift, you hear the engine. And so for me, that was important as a car enthusiast. I wanted to find out, how can we bring emotions into the future mobility, but also figure a way how to cater to the demands that I think is going to be out there from next generations of buyers, which is not going to tolerate the type of things we thought was really cool, like, you know, watching a mechanic, you know, adjusting the carburetors for an hour. You know, those are not of interest to the next generation of car buyers. So that went through our mind, and that's kind of how we started Fisker Inc.
All right, but let me go back a little bit before that. I mean, because you were a world-renowned designer, okay? You know, Z07, X5, DB9. I mean, and then you decided to go into the business of making cars. I mean, where did that idea come from? I mean, most designers, near as I can tell, just continue to design and get promoted up and then retire.
You know, I think, you know, I spent many years at BMW, and then, of course, I went to Aston Martin. And Aston Martin was really, I mean, it's still a very small company, but at that time it was even smaller. I mean, when I came in, they didn't have a design department, you know, didn't have an economics department. So it was really almost like what they call the cottage industry. And, you know, that partly sort of inspired me that you could do a lot with very few people. So that was number one. Number two was that when I, you know, designed a couple of cars at Aston Martin, I almost felt like, you know, I was in my late 30s, and I thought, you know, it's almost like I felt, what else can I do in my career? I got to design, you know, BMW Z8, couple of Aston Martins, you know, I got to do something more. And you know, so I kind of went out and just jumped out as an entrepreneur together with a business partner, and we started making some specialty cars and supercars. And it was really just, hey, maybe I can just do exactly what I want instead of always having to compromise. I think that's sort of where it started. And it was a very naive thing to do. And my first venture with doing coach-built cars was by far not very successful. I mean, we did, you know, I think about 12, 13 cars. But it was a great learning experience. And during that time, and that was back sort of in 2005-06, it really dawned on me that, we kind of started seeing some electric cars, but they were really dorky, and hybrids. And I remember just seeing Leonardo DiCaprio going to the Oscars in a Prius, and I thought, I'm sure this guy could afford, a cooler car than that, in my view at least. So that kind of spurred the idea to start Fisker Automotive the first time around and do the Fisker Karma.
Go ahead, Chase, jump on in.
Yeah, I guess kind of leading off of that, speaking about your background and where Fisker is now, could you share maybe a couple examples of some of these trends where you were seeing electric vehicles starting to take off, and what maybe a couple of trends you saw that have really bloomed, and then maybe a couple of trends you thought would be bigger in the industry and then just never really took off?
Yeah, I mean, there's the obvious ones where you see the clear acceleration of the sales of Tesla vehicles, obviously. But for me, in 2016, it still wasn't fully, they hadn't taken off completely yet. Even Tesla was just starting at that time. And I think for me, it was kind of a culmination of things. I thought that as we are moving into this sort of mobility at your fingertips, calling an Uber, it became clear to me that, and we also start talking about autonomous vehicles, it became clear to me that, the days are really going to be numbered where somebody's going to sit specifically with a manual transmission and a gasoline engine on the way to work. It may still be something that we do for fun in the weekend. It's just like, people still ride horses in the weekend, but they don't ride a horse to work anymore. And I think pretty soon we're going to get to that point with cars. And I just felt that when you truly look at an electric car, there's a couple of things that the automotive industry have tried to do for 100 years that happens automatically with an electric car. So one of the things is, or actually two important things. One, the car makers have for years and years try to make the gasoline engines as quiet and smooth as possible. Well, electric engine just is that. And secondly, the car industry have tried to make the gear change or the gear shift as smooth as possible. Well, that's automatic in an electric car too. So those two things coming together makes it really the perfect commuter car. Let's forget for a moment, Ferraris and all that stuff, but it's the perfect commuter car. Instant torque. You don't have to shift gear. There is no delay. And for me, I saw that once people discover that, and it has to be discovered, I think it's going to take off extremely fast. One of the things that has, for me, prohibited a bit or stalled or why we have kind of been waiting for electric cars to take off, that I just don't think enough people have been exposed to them. I remember the first time I saw the iPhone. And I'm a very progressive guy, but I remember seeing it, and I had all the different Nokia flip phones, got a new one every year. And I saw that, and before I took it in my hand, I go, oh, that's not going to work. Then I got it in my hand, I got to swipe it once, and I go, yep, that's going to work. It was that thing, and I think a lot of people have just never got into an electric car, and their first instinct is, it's never going to work. But once you get in it, once you live with it, you figure out it's actually better than a gasoline car. So that's the kind of difficulty that we are in. How can we get more people to try an electric car? And of course, the cool ones have been expensive, and there hasn't really been good-looking, sexy, affordable electric cars. Like they've got a lot of good-looking, normal, gasoline cars, but there's really missed in electric cars, and I think that's been another issue. And that's, by the way, why I decided I've never done an affordable car in my life, design-wise or anything. So I decided this time that was going to be my challenge, to really get in to what essentially is, the average price of an American car today is about $37,500, and that was our target.
Hey, that's let's hold that thought. We got to take a quick commercial break. I want to come back and ask you more about that. But first, a shout out to our great sponsor, Hyundai. That's who we've got this time. Okay, let's go.
What's the weather tomorrow?
High of 64.
Find me the closest coffee shop.
20 results found.
And a date for tonight.
No, you're good. Introducing dynamic voice recognition in the all-new Hyundai Elantra.
All right, we're back talking with Henrik Fisker. And Henrik, I want to pick up on what you just left off on. What does it take to do a really good, lower priced, daily commuter electric car? I mean, what kind of mentality from a design standpoint do you have to bring to do that?
Well, in terms of the pricing, you need to have volume. And that obviously is the first huge barrier to anybody. In fact, any large OEM. And that's why it hasn't been really done yet, because we have this issue that it's sort of the chicken and the egg. We don't have volume yet in electric vehicles. So how do you then get going with an affordable electric vehicle you make money on? Now, there's been a few where the big OEMs have lost some money. They've tried it. They've made them very small. But then suddenly they became kind of not that exciting and nobody bought them. So what we did was we really looked into the business model of being an automaker, and we kind of thought the world don't really need another normal car maker. So our main goal was actually to get that affordable vehicle in the hands of the customer. It was not to do the traditional things that you think about an automaker must do. Like we have no intent to show the world that we can manufacture a car better than Toyota. That's not our prerogative. That's not what we want to do. We don't have to do, our own, steel stamped or aluminum stamped frame or whatever it might be. So we moved out of the box and started looking at how can we take cost out of development, how can we get faster to market, and how can we get lower price. And the lower price coming to volume, we realized that the only way to do that was we had to partner up with somebody to get volume from the get-go, and that meant sharing the fundamental platform of an electric vehicle. And that goes much further than it's not just the floor of the vehicle, it's all the integration, it's all the parts that you as a customer never see, but you want to work. It could be anything from an air conditioner to a seating frame to the window regulators, the door hinges, whatever it is, all the stuff that must be in a car. And if we could put that into volume, we could thereby lower the base build of materials of the vehicle. And that's what we have done. We've gone in, started with this platform that ultimately will develop to be more of a Fiskar platform, our variation, because we're making some changes. But we are probably keeping, I would estimate, about 70% of the parts common. And that means we can drive the build of materials down. So that's from an economic standpoint. From a design standpoint, I kind of went the opposite way and said, this car has to look like an expensive car. It's going to look like you get value for money. So we on purpose didn't want to make it too small. We on purposely did not want to make it look like a hatchback. We really want to make it look like an SUV because that is the fastest growing segment in the world in every single major market. So that was sort of the starting point. And we also knew, and that's something I never really had to deal much with before, that when I used to design Aston Martins or at least the BMW Z8, we didn't really care about how big the trunk was or how easy it was to get in and out of and all that stuff. So, but this vehicle, obviously, I wanted to have a really, really dynamic stance, a really sexy body, a dropping roof, but at the same time, we had to work really close with engineering to make sure that we had the usability for this to become an everyday car. So that was the challenge as you start working on a vehicle of that price range.
So presumably you're looking at this platform as being something that will have derivatives as you move forward in time. Is that the case?
Yeah, we will definitely have at least one more vehicle on this platform. There is obviously also another OEM that is putting vehicles on this platform, which is why we have the volume. We will change the platform slightly to fit our vehicle more design-wise, so it will kind of become a little bit our unique platform. We're also aiming to make this the safest car in this category by the time it comes out. So we had to add some structural integrity in certain areas of this vehicle. But our business model is to get not just one, but multiple vehicles out. And that means also vehicles in other categories, which means we're going to have to partner up probably with another OEM or another group to get another platform in a different size. And that's things we're working on as well. So we will probably end up with several partnerships, which, by the way, I think is going to be the future. You're going to see a lot more car companies partner up as we move forward.
Can you share like what the goal is for total production volume for these cars to start? And you may, obviously there's the Ocean, and we can kind of talk more about that, but how many are you looking to, of these different vehicles, are you looking to launch?
Well, we have announced officially that we want to get at least 4 vehicles to market before 2025. That's a pretty aggressive product plan, but we have an internal development process, which we call FFPAD, which stands for Fisker Flexible Platform Adaptive Design. It's a long word, but it's a process that we have put together to accelerate product development to pretty much less than 2.5 years from sketch to getting a car to market, which is very short. We have also, because of the platform sharing, obviously lowered the investment into each vehicle. It does mean a lot of discipline from a design point of view, and it makes it a little easier that I'm both the CEO and chief designer. So I have to actually keep my foot back sometimes, making too many changes. But if that's our goal, to get at least 4 vehicles out before 2025, and our goal is to make well over 200,000 vehicles in 2025. If the market grows even faster, I think we have enough capacity together with Magna to be able to get even higher than that number. And that's one of the great collaboration. That's the real big part of this collaboration, is that we have instant access to a lot of volume globally.
So let's go into that a little bit more, Henrik. I'm assuming then, because excuse my ignorance, but I'm assuming that this is the Magna platform that it developed, and it's also going to be making this in China with, I think it's a subsidiary of BAIC, the Beijing Automotive Industry Corporation. Is that how you're getting all this volume?
No, they're not going to be making in China. We're actually making this our vehicle is going to be produced in Europe at their manufacturing facility in Europe. And again, Magna developed this platform to be used by multiple OEMs, and there might be more than the initial 2 OEMs on this platform. And I think, by the way, that's a trend that's going to move forward. So we will have potentially several OEMs, and it's developed and sourced with the mindset of hundreds of thousands of units. And that's kind of what the advantage here is. Now, we are making some changes, as I said, to this platform, so it kind of become our unique platform. But you're right, we do have the opportunity to potentially make this vehicle in China if we see the China market's big enough. But we're starting within Europe, and then we are discussing with Magna the potential of manufacturing here in the US. And that, of course, also will have to do with how big the volume becomes here in the US. I would say generally, if once you pass 50,000 units in either US, China, or Europe, it makes sense to manufacture locally.
Oh.
So the FM29 platform, was that your development or was that Magna's development?
It was Magna's development. They have spent several years developing it, testing it, sourcing it. The battery as well. The battery pack has been developed with this platform. What's unique about this platform is it takes a really large volume battery pack compared to the size. Now, when we looked at this platform and we started working with Magna several months ago, we obviously went in and said we want to make a few changes to this platform to make it fit our vehicle, and thereby, even though we are several OEMs sharing the platform, we end up with slightly different dimensions, slightly different proportions, but the fundamentals underneath is shared between the different groups. Now, Magna has not, and I am not really allowed to discuss who else is on this platform. That's not really our business to announce that. But from our point of view, this obviously will develop into becoming a bit of a Fisker platform in itself.
Go ahead, Chase.
Oh, okay. Well, one question I have about that is with that platform and kind of working with Magna. I think the way you're approaching it's really unique. And if you want to start with a high volume car, that totally makes sense compared to the rest of the industry, like Tesla, who's trying to go all vertically integrated, or others who are kind of doing a little bit of both. What would you say outside of doing this partnership with Magna is what makes Fisker really stand out in the electric vehicle space? Or what are some of the kind of the unique propositions? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, when you start digging into the technology aspect, of in the automotive industry going into electric, and not only electric, but just where we are going in the future. I think there's sort of three areas where we are developing technology. One is the consumer-facing technology, which is our proprietary app, which we're expanding on. So our entire customer experience is going to be digital, from how you buy the car to how we come and pick up the car to take it to service. You never have to take our car to service, et cetera, et cetera. How we're going to update the car as it get older. We have a unique flexible lease model where we actually own the car for at least 8 years. We even think about taking it all the way to end of life and recycling it. And that means that when somebody gives back the car, let's say after a couple of years, and we lease it back out, we can reset the car, send it back out, and you can decide what type of options you want to purchase on the car, and we can send them to you over there. So that's a whole technology in itself that needs to be developed, a technology platform. You have to develop a process of how to make that function. We're doing that at Fisker. Then secondly, there is the entire user interface in the car. Once you get in the car, what is the experience, the connectivity? How does the user interface, what is the visual? How does it actually function? So that's something that we want to develop a lot of IP in. I don't think anybody yet has really come up with a really great user interface. And it's not enough for me to have a big screen that is a touch screen. I think we need to go way beyond that, because I don't think we're going to have cars without steering wheels for the next couple of years. And with that in mind, meaning that you're still going to be driving maybe 65 miles an hour and operating a vehicle, getting entertained by certain things. So it's a big task to have all this to function in a safe yet exciting way. So that's where we want to take a lead. We just got a great guy on board from Microsoft that's developed a lot of amazing stuff there, and he's heading this up. And then the third part of the technology that we're developing as well is everything to do with the software that controls the vehicle. And that's really the major difference of how we are moving into the future. In the past, everybody was working on, turning the screws in the suspension or turning the screws somewhere else to adjust something in the car. All that is done with software in the future. And you need to have experts that can do that and develop, codes and certain things that makes the car unique to your brand. And incorporated in that is the battery management system, to understand fully the internals of a battery, how it operates, how do you get the most power out of it. Something that you guys can see out there today is that, there is really nobody right now that has a unique, outstanding battery technology. Everybody's using battery cells that are pretty similar, whether it's Tesla, Panasonic, or LG Chem or CATL, SK. They're all pretty similar in terms of the power density and everything else. So what is really the differentiator is actually how you get that energy out of the battery and the efficiency of the rest of the powertrain. So that's where in my view, you're going to see the differentiators in the future.
Hey, let's take another quick commercial break right now. We got a lot more to talk about, but shout out right now to Borg Warner.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what Borg Warner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
All right, we're back. Henrik, I'm fascinated by this, the way that you're working with Magna. It seems to me that one of the things that you've learned from the different things that you've gone through in your career is that you don't have to do everything. I mean, Tesla's at the polar opposite end. As Chase had mentioned, it wants to go as vertically integrated as possible. Looks like General Motors is going along the same kind of lines as it gets into EVs. But it seems to me, as an outsider looking in, you've realized that it's actually possible to outsource a lot because the supplier community is so capable these days to the point where a Magna can make an entire vehicle. Can you talk a little bit about that as to what you're going to have suppliers do for you and what Fisker is going to do and only keep that in-house?
Well, look, let's start by looking at a great example out there that was my inspiration, Apple and Foxconn. You know, Apple don't make their own phones, and I don't think they've done too shabby, and I don't think anybody questions their abilities. So that was really the inspiration for this, and that's really where we're turning, you know, the general view of the auto industry upside down. But it goes deeper than that. It's really about getting into volume, getting into cost effectiveness and efficiency. So, for instance, with Magna, you know, they have built over, I think, 3.5 million vehicles. They are absolute experts. They know how to make a high quality car in the fewest hours. And that's an experience they have built over decades. And I honestly don't think there's any startup company that can quickly whip up that experience over a couple of years. And you know, you can have seen some of the other startups that are producing electric vehicles, one here in America and one in China. They've both been very open about how difficult it was to get the production up and running. And as I said before, that's not something that we want to go out and brag about how great we are making the car. I don't think we need to make the car to create IP, to create value, and to be differentiated. If we have a high quality car, that's important for me, and that's important for our customer. So that's where we're going to work with Magna. The second part is, as I mentioned earlier, already the auto industry is sharing a lot of components. Most consumers are not aware of it. But I mean, one simple thing is spark plugs. Nobody makes their own spark plugs. And you know, there's brakes and steering racks and all that. A lot of these components are already shared. And then you've got some of the very big car companies, they're already sharing platforms within their own organization. I mean, Toyota, Lexus, etc. So that's already happening. Now, it is not, and it has not happened in EV industry yet, but I believe it's going to happen in even larger fashion. And the reason is that what traditionally used to differentiate one car company from another was very much attached to some of those very expensive components that was part of creating the DNA for a company, whether it was the engine, the gearbox, even the platform. You know, the stiffness of a platform could determine how your car drives. But, you know, when you integrate a battery, all the electric car platforms are stiff. They have to be. So, you know, suddenly that falls away too. So the question now is, where do you want to spend the money on the customer and what the customer sees, hears, and feels? And that what we are doing is we're spending our development money in all the areas where we think or where we see the customer get something out of it. And that's really, in our view, where we're going to build the IP. And that goes all the way down to design, which is obviously something that is one of my passions. And I personally think moving into electrification, design is going to be even more important, both exterior and interior, because, you know, now that's going to become an even more important factor of why you choose a car. It's not anymore how the engine sounds, how smooth the gear shift is, because it's the same in all of the vehicles. So now you start putting more and more emphasis on design. Of course, depending on the vehicle category, it could be utility and it could be other things. And that's where we want to really spend our time and effort.
Does the fact that you're working on electric vehicles allow you to do what you're talking about, meaning that, you know, you have someone else take care of all the not so greasy bits anymore because they're not so greasy, and you're able to do the design? You can look at the interface, you can look at the service model that you're using, you can look at the lease model that you're using, you can look at optimizing the battery and so on. Is that inherent in an EV versus if you were to try to start up an ICE engine powered vehicle company today?
Well, I think a gasoline engine, if you have a car company that, you know, makes gasoline vehicles, then, you know, the first thing is always, well, whoa, you didn't make your own engine? Where do you buy that from? You know, I don't really think that's a question in electric cars that much. In fact, many of the Chinese electric vehicles on the market, I think there's the same motor supplier that makes them. And nobody's really questioning that because it isn't really a big differentiator. So yes, in that respect, absolutely. Now, also to make it clear, you know, it's not like we sit back and say, hey, just deliver us a platform with all this stuff. We still go out and have an engineering group that specifies. And if it doesn't fit what we want, then we have to go and either re-engineer some of it, or we have to go to a different supplier to get the quality we want. So there, we still own the entire process of signing off every single supplier. We still own the process of all the specifications in the vehicle, and we are taking part of the engineering of the vehicle as well, our team here. So it's a very much a joint effort between Magna and Fisker and suppliers as well, because sometimes supplier will do some engineering on a certain part. So it's not an easy process, and in fact, I would say to actually make this collaboration work has taken us many, many months. In fact, it took us several years to truly understand how would we integrate that relationship, because you've got teams sitting in different areas with different capabilities, and who needs to do what. You don't want to double, you don't want to make double effort in certain areas. So it's not something that's that easy to set up, because obviously we want the car to come out to be a Fisker with our DNA. So we do have to have quite a lot of input put on it. But what makes it a little easier when you start with a platform is a lot of the basic components that needs durability testing has already gone through durability testing. So it takes a couple of years out of the development when you join in with somebody else. Now, it's also possible in the future, as we evolve and our engineering group evolves, that we will maybe jointly make a platform with somebody else. And I could see that as a possibility too. But right now we're in a startup phase, and we only have so much abilities right now in terms of manpower and money and everything else. So we want to put that in the right areas and focus. And right now we are focusing on disrupting the automotive industry and coming out with a vehicle that actually is priced incredibly aggressively compared to anybody else out there and still makes money.
The partnership with Magna makes a lot of sense, just because you're both leveraging kind of your own subject matter expertise. Then with manufacturing, obviously yours with design and previous EV experience. I am kind of wondering though, like with those volumes you're looking to launch with, what are you doing? What is Fisker doing as far as kind of getting the awareness? I don't want to say it was scientific by any means, but I did ask a few friends who I would say are fairly car smart, or at least know the different brands. And when I asked them about Fisker, they obviously referred to the Karma, which was a great vehicle, but also just trying to get that new awareness with this vehicle that's going to be this first one that's going to be more in the compact SUV. And then upon sharing that with them, they were also curious about charging and stuff like that. But yeah, I would just love to learn a little bit more about what Fisker is looking to do with building awareness for this car and cars coming out with this kinds of volumes.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the difficulties when you're a startup, and you will remember back to other startups, is that you tend to show your vehicle probably earlier than you really want to, and that's because you have to go out and raise money. You got to show your investors what you're doing. So we showed the Fisker Ocean in January this year, which and now we're in December. We're almost 2 years still away from launching the vehicle, which is extremely early. And we actually don't want to over market the vehicle itself right now, because people are like, well, why can't I get it, in 6 months or 3 months? It's still almost 2 years away. So despite all that though, and haven't really done much marketing other than a few fun things, we just announced, I think on Monday, that we passed 10,000 reservations, paid reservations, $250 down. And we keep 10% on that just to make people serious about it. We have over 40,000 registrations of interest in the vehicle. So I think that's pretty good 2 years ahead of having done much brand awareness. Now we are going to build and work on the brand awareness part, as you mentioned, Chase, and we will announce, I think, some pretty exciting partnerships, some pretty innovative marketing, I would say marketing. It's a little hard to say what it is yet, but we haven't announced it. But something interesting that we think is going to actually build awareness, and that's going to kind of start next year, and we are really excited about that.
Henrik, we've got the ocean up here. Talk us through how you approach designing an electric car versus everything else that you've done in your career. Is it really that different? And I'm especially curious to get your input on the face of the car, because it's my own personal opinion that electric cars that have grills are going to look so outdated in a couple of years, but you take it from there.
Well, first of all, all electric cars do need air to come in, and it doesn't matter which electric car you look at, they have air coming in usually below the bumper. And by the way, most gasoline cars today also get most of the air from below the bumper beam, and the sort of the grills on top sometimes are fake or don't contribute that much to that because you have the bumper beam and some other elements in there. But you're right, I don't think we need the sort of emphasis on a grill sitting high up. So if you look at our vehicle, we actually have closed it up high up. We do have a pattern on the lower part that maybe on the first look looks like a big grill, but as you go closer, you can see it's more of a pattern that actually opens up almost like a parametric pattern towards the bottom, as you can see on this vehicle here. But where the license plate is closed, and then it opens up as we go down. And that was sort of a styling feature where we felt it was too boring just to have a flat surface sitting there. But as you look up on the top, it is all closed off because we don't need air up there. The other part that you're in my view that I was looking at was most SUVs tend to have a very straight hood line, and we actually have a very dropping hood line because we don't have a giant engine out in front. As you can see on this side view, also the front windscreen has been moved forward, so we don't have the sort of traditional long dash to axle, meaning center of the front wheel to the A-pillar. So you move the A-pillar further forward, which actually allows you to have more interior space with the same dimensions. So our vehicle is like you say, compact, but it's probably, so whereas maybe it's the size for people like a BMW X3, it has more interior space of a BMW X5, so a vehicle size larger. And that's really because you can utilize the space more. When it comes to the rear, our vehicle has a pretty short rear overhang, so the wheels are really pushed out in the corners. And we can also do that because, you don't have to deal with a gas tank that needs a certain space to the bumper, etc. So you're not dealing with that issue. And also, as you can see in the lower part of the bumper, we have worked with aerodynamics to get some slip of the air, because we don't have to deal with exhaust pipes that you normally have to deal with at the rear. So there is some differentiation here when you design a vehicle. However, in my view, for our first vehicle, I was more interested to do a beautiful SUV than just doing a different car. And I think just to do something different for the sake of being different, then turns out being ugly, is not really the way I like to design cars. I think with our SUV, when you put it next to another SUV, and nobody has seen the reality yet because we only got to show it at the Consumer Electronics Show in January, and there was a few consumer guys there, but there was no car people. So, and then Geneva show was canceled. So interestingly enough, a lot of people order the car, but they really don't know how big the car is. They can see dimensions, but it's hard to understand. And, we're going to show it for the first time at the LA Auto Show in May, and our experience here in LA in around May next year. And that's going to be the first time you're going to be able to walk up to this vehicle. And I think you'll be very surprised about the extremely dynamic proportions of this vehicle once you actually see it. It's something that doesn't necessarily come across that much in pictures, but once you get up to it, you'll be quite surprised. It looks quite different proportional from any other SUV out there.
Hey, let's take another, the last quick commercial break right here. A shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. And we're back. Go ahead, Gary.
One of the things that is being emphasized about this vehicle is that it is the world's most sustainable vehicle. Can you talk to us about the sustainability and why you think that's important?
I think one of the foundations for the Fisker brand has definitely been sustainability. When we launched the Fisker Karma originally, I think we're the first with reclaimed wood and large solar roof and vegan interior and all that back in 2011. Now a lot of people are doing it. So, but I really thought about we need to move one step even further and see what can we do as an industry to try and get more recycled materials into the vehicle, more sustainable materials. And as we start going out to suppliers already in 2019, we saw it was very difficult because the auto industry takes very long to change, and also there's a lot of sort of tear and wear tests, etc. So you can see a cool material maybe on a handbag or a jacket, but it can't be used in a car because of the type of durability test they have to go through. So we actually went to a lot of suppliers, worked on it, and our aim is to make our vehicles the most sustainable vehicles. And that's not a sort of once the ocean comes out, the mission is accomplished. This is going to be an ongoing effort that we're doing, trying to use recycled material, bottles from the ocean, plastic bottles, etc. And I think for me, it's also part of bringing awareness about what we need to do as a society, what we can do as an industry. I mean, it's clear the auto industry is one of the biggest polluters in the world, and there's a ton of stuff we can do. And during COVID, we saw the blue skies. We saw how amazing it was for a few days when there was no gasoline cars on the road. However, I love cars, and I don't believe we should forbid cars, and that's what some politicians maybe in some other countries like to do. But I think if we can make cars a positive part of our society, not because they're fun to drive and good to look at, but also, being more sustainable, I think that's the objective, and that's where we want to take a leadership.
Do you think that you're talking earlier about young people not being particularly interested in cars the way previous generations were, that having an electric vehicle that is focusing on green issues would be something more appealing to them than it otherwise might be?
Yeah, I think so. Look, we have a lot of people, like I said, already ordered the car and has mentioned this to us. I think personally that a lot of younger people are going to buy products where they can identify with the brand's efforts or their philosophy, their vision, their mission. Specifically, when you talk about a car, it's such an expensive product, and is really, you're showing off your lifestyle, who you are as a person. So I do believe that's important, and that's also why generally ESG, environmental, social governance, is important for us. We got an incredible diverse board. We got 3 women on our board. By the way, my 2 direct report design chiefs are both women. So I think we're moving in to a future which are completely going to turn around from what we knew before COVID. I think post-COVID, a lot of people are going to be much more aware and interested in how our society as a total evolves.
You mentioned with your when you're kind of going out to look for different materials and parts for your current vehicles, that it's still a bit challenging. What are some of the things that you would like to see as far as changes from the automotive landscape as the shift to electric vehicles happens?
Well, there's 2 things. I mean, first, I would like to see more sustainable materials, more recyclable materials. And that's something, recyclable materials are still fairly new. And, some of the processes are still not there yet to make them durable enough. But some of them are. And in fact, some of the materials, when you see them and they're recycled, they actually look, you wouldn't even know it's recycled. I mean, it's not like in the old days. Remember when I was a kid, you could truly see the recycled toilet paper and it was nasty to use. But now you don't know if it's recycled or not, right? So it may be a bad example there. But the point is that you can make great recyclable materials today. So that's the one thing. And I think this is just a continuing effort. And there's a lot of suppliers who are really moving in that direction. In fact, even some new suppliers that are coming into the automotive segment. Then the second part is the suppliers themselves, and of course, whoever builds vehicles that we, in this case, we're not building the vehicle, but that we work with our suppliers to make sure it's done in as sustainable way as possible. And there we have also seen quite a lot already has happened with water-based paints, etc., that started years ago. So I think that's another area where there can be huge improvement. And in fact, right now in the world, there's at least 20% overcapacity in automotive manufacturing. So just by the fact that we are not building a new factory means that is lowering the carbon footprint because we're using existing manufacturing capacity.
Boy, I love what you're saying about sustainability. I think this is really good. And I like your kind of vision there. Imagine being able to vacuum all that plastic out of the ocean and start making cars or parts of cars out of it. I love what you're talking about here. Hey, we've got a lot of questions from viewers right now. We've answered a lot of these questions in the course of the show, but Ivan E. Vila says, first of all, congratulations on 10,000 reservation milestone. His question is, how do people that have reserved the Fisker Ocean be able to see their place in line? How do we know that our number is within the 10,000K reservation or 10K reservation?
Yes, I get that question a lot, and right now we don't assign numbers to people's reservation, but they will be in line according with how they came in the orders. And the reason we don't assign is because look, we're 2 years ahead, and we don't know. You may have somebody canceling their car. Maybe you're number 10, and number 9 cancels the car. And now you're number 9. So that can change. So therefore, we're a little hesitant to go out yet to do that. But as we go through the next sort of 18 months, we are going to start, after we show the car, we'll definitely have more of a car configurator. And then eventually in 2022, we're going to start reaching back out to people, confirming they want to lease or buy the car. And that's when you start getting to know. But you would know yourself, if you've already made a reservation, you are definitely within the first 10,000.
You're mentioning people that have made reservations. So a Danish ride-hailing company, Viggo, is ordered 300. Talk to us about that and how proud you are as a proud Dane about that happening.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm actually American now, but I was born in Denmark. So, but yes, very proud. I mean, look, I think that Scandinavia is really are on the forefront of environmental issues and have been it for a long time. I grew up with my mother yelling I have to take off the light and not throw chocolate paper on the street, etc. So, but I think it was really great to see a ride-hailing service committing 100% to electric vehicles and also trusting in this early to order our vehicle. In fact, we are in discussion with several large groups in Europe about getting large fleet orders, because in Europe, they are getting stricter and stricter with emissions, and there might be some big tax savings as well for big companies that are giving their employees fleets of electric cars, and I think also for the image, etc. So very exciting, absolutely.
Speaking of ride hailing, can you share? We've touched the surface a little bit about, but can you share like any autonomy or other advanced features that these Fisker EVs will have?
So, for us, I think coming to autonomy, I think we have to sort of step a step back. And I think we've already done it. I think a couple of years ago, everybody was predicting that in 2020, there would be no steering wheels in cars anymore. And I think we all realized that wasn't going to go this quick. So I think let's forget for a moment level 5 autonomy, where there's no steering wheel, you can go anywhere at any time and all that. So I think instead what's going to happen, at least from our point of view, what we want to do at Fisker, we want to look at specific areas of autonomy where we can give a unique experience to our customer, or where we can help our customer, or where we can make a safer environment for our customer. So we are working on some specific ideas that don't exist today, or there's maybe a variation of them, where you would be able to push a button and something magical will happen in a certain situation. But we want that magic to be without a stress. And for me, if I'm turning on autonomy right now at 65 miles an hour, I'm a little stressed because I constantly get reminded with my hand back on the steering wheel. I'm not quite sure if it's 100% going to work. So it's not really as relaxing in my view as it should be. And it's not as feel-good, safe feeling as it should be. So what we're looking at instead is, let's see if we can find some areas where we really, really can make it like this 100% magic feeling. And that may not be anywhere at any time, but rather certain situations at certain places, to give you a hint. So that's what we are working on. And I think we're going to have not only state-of-the-art autonomy features, but I actually think we're going to beat everybody in a few of these features that we're working on right now.
Hey, we've got another question here from Stephen Tovar, or maybe it's Stefan. As you mentioned, nobody's quite seen the car. I actually did see it at CES, but he says, I've pre-ordered an Ocean EV, but I cannot get the dimensions to make sure it will fit in my tiny garage. Or should I be prepared to build it out? So Henrik, what are the exact dimensions of the vehicle?
Well, the reason, we had some early dimension of one of the first prototypes, but now we're sort of staying away from giving the dimensions because we are showing the final production vehicle in May next year. But it's about 4.75 meters long, or 4,750 millimeters long. It's just about, and it might change in a few millimeters as we're finalizing a few things, like, for instance, European pedestrian safety. There needs to be a smaller lip on the low end of the car, and there might be a few changes here and there. But like I mentioned, it's not quite a compact SUV, but it's sort of a medium-sized, in that segment of the vehicles that are known out there. But I'm sure it'll fit in this garage. Otherwise, it's an incredible small garage.
Tell us about California mode and why is that important?
As I was looking at this, as I was designing the vehicle, I thought, I want to have something in an SUV that really is different, something that is fun, but also utilitarian. And the idea was really, what if you could, so, honestly, a little bit my inspiration, I'm going to give a little shout out here, was to the original Jeep Wrangler, where, you can take all the parts of the car. And I don't know how long that takes, but I thought, I don't want to spend an hour taking all these parts of the car and leaving them in the garage. I think that's pretty cool for the hardcore off-road fanatics, but if you're just sort of rolling around town, you want to do something now. So the idea was, what if you, on the push of a button, within a few seconds, could roll down all the windows except for the front, windscreen. And that I went to engineering with it, and they, were like, oh no, it's going to be really tough, and when you slam the trunk, and then you got a water management and little side windows. But finally, they spent a lot of time on it, and we actually filed a patent on it because it is quite complicated. But the real cool thing is that you kind of have that roll cage where you feel it's, you're driving a convertible, but you're not. You're driving a real SUV, with the entire roll cage. You can close at any point in time. But the second part I thought was really cool is that, one of our good friends, is Zach, which is one of the world champions in surfing, and he was like, hey man, I want to be able to put a surfboard on the roof and all that. And I said, what if you can just stick it in through the back? And he says, yeah, but I don't want to drive with the open trunk. So we came up with the electric roll down window, and there has been these windows done in the past on some American station wagons in the 60s, but they had to stop it because exhaust pipe, the exhaust would actually, fumes would be dragged into the car because of the turbulence.
You've been there, done that.
Yeah, I know. So one funny story was that when we kind of showed it to the engineering team, and there was one engineer that hadn't seen it, and he said, well, I'm not sure that's going to work because I remember the fumes were dragged in, and I had to remind him, yeah, but our car is electric. So, I think it's a really cool, unique feature. And I also know it's something that is very hard for any competitor to quickly sort of copy, because you actually have to dimensionally design the vehicle so all this works. Otherwise, you can't just randomly make it on any car. So I think it's going to be a really unique feature. I've driven the vehicle with this feature, and it's a great feeling. And specifically, if you want to throw in something like a surfboard or a long board from Home Depot, it's just a really great feature in my view.
You got something there, Chase?
Yeah, I've got all sorts of questions, but I know it's still a couple years out, but one of the big things I think that's just more people are open to it, but still kind of holding back depending on going to an EV because of the charging infrastructure. And a lot of new car companies are kind of, whether it's through Electrify America or others, are now offering like 2 or 3 years free charging. Is there anything you can share so far about what options that Fisker drivers will have when they're trying to, whether it's going on a road trip or just what charging options are available to them?
Well, we have actually signed an agreement with Electrify America, now that you mentioned them, and we are able as a company to basically purchase EV packages or charging packages from them that we can offer to our customers, so we can decide whether you have X amount of thousands of miles for free in charging. We haven't finalized the details of that yet, so it's probably too early to give any information on that, but we have that. My personal opinion on charging is that the only way we truly are going to get mass adoption of electrification is if people feel that we have a complete infrastructure of charging stations with a common plug, which is available to everybody. I mean, just imagine if we have started out with Ford Motor Company having their own gas stations and Mercedes having a different gas station and with different filling caps, and you couldn't use that station if you had a Mercedes, and you couldn't use that if you had a Ford. It would have been a nightmare. It would have been the car industry would never have grown that fast. So I actually think that the next step is that we need to get all these different charging groups. They're going to all be somehow on a common map and a common app that we can all see where they are, and that's already happening. And then the final thing is, the plug. The good news is the CCS2 plug is now common both in US and Europe. I think it's only Tesla that has a unique plug, and my advice would be that Tesla sells their charging infrastructure to somebody and makes it available to everybody. I think that would actually get EV adoption to go even faster. So that's where I think it needs to go. We need to have a common infrastructure that's available to everybody, and it's got to be built out. So wherever you go in any direction within 100 miles, there has to be a charging station with several chargers available to charge, and obviously fast chargers. So that, and I think it's, Electrify America is a big part of that. They're going to have a huge infrastructure in a couple of years. And when you look already at the map and where they're going, they're going to get close to getting there, but we need a little bit more to happen.
Henrik, we've got another question here from one of our viewers, Dan Lynn. He's curious. He'd like to know, how's your relationship nowadays with Elon Musk?
I haven't talked to him for many, many years. Back in the day, we were, I worked a bit with Tesla. We had a lawsuit, which I won. And after that, we really haven't talked. So there isn't any relationship to talk about.
Okay. Here's another one from Jonathan Brown. He says, you say you never have to service the vehicle. He thinks that's a little ambitious.
I said that the customer will never have to take the car to service. We will come and pick up the car and take it to service for you. And we have signed a couple of agreements, both here in the US and in Europe, for external service providers, because I don't think that it's worth a customer's time to drive a car to a dealer, pick up a loan, a car, sign a whole bunch of papers, drive to work, and then have to drive back to pick up the car, give back the loan, a car. What we are saying is, you know what, electric cars don't have anyway a scheduled maintenance, but if something goes wrong, this vehicle is fully connected, we'll know it, you'll know it, you can send us a notification over the app, or we'll know it and send you a notification. We'll come and pick up the car when it's a good time. We'll open it with a PPA key. We'll bring it back, drop your PIN. It's parked here, either at your job or at home. And I think that's much more convenient than the old-fashioned way.
Henrik, with legacy automakers like General Motors announcing, 40% of their vehicles being EVs by the end of 2025, with BMW and Mercedes and on and on and on, traditional legacy builders coming out with EVs, why do you think people will find buying from you something that they can be confident about?
Well, first of all, I'll throw a question back to you. Tesla's been on the market for 7 years, and the established automotive industry have trillions of dollars, and they've all made electric cars, yet none of them has made an electric car with the same range as a Tesla yet. And they've had 7 years. So I don't know if I'm that confident that we're going to have these amazing electric vehicles a few years from now from the traditional OEMs. They may come out with some electric vehicles, but I'm extremely confident that we can compete with them. There is no particular advantage than the traditional OEMs have. They're big, yes. They have a lot of money, yes. But they also have, a lot of legacy they have to get rid of. They have an entire infrastructure of gasoline vehicles, manufacturing plants, engine plants. They got hundreds of thousands of engineers that, have perfected the gasoline engine, but don't necessarily know anything about electrification. So I think there is sort of an even playing field, and I think that's why you're seeing the excitement on Wall Street, because I think you're going to see a huge disruption happening in the automotive industry in the next 5 years. I think you're going to see a consolidation, probably of some startups with some large OEMs. You already start seeing that. And then I think you're going to see some of the larger OEMs becoming smaller, the traditional ones, maybe even becoming truck makers or commercial vehicle makers. And I think it's an open playing field for everybody. And I think we've already seen the consumers willing to try electric cars from new brands. I mean, Tesla's the best example of that. And it's because we can concentrate on only making electric cars. We can do things much more radical. We don't have self-implied policies and rules and regulations that we have followed for the last 100 years. So I think we'll be able to come up with some extremely exciting and attractive product, but it has to be extremely exciting and it has to be better than what else is out there, no doubt about it.
Henrik, we're probably getting down to the end here. You must be really pleased to be able to get your company listed. Walk us through the little bit of the process there of doing the reverse merger and being able to raise as much money as you have.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have been out raising money for a long time privately. It's extremely difficult. And the reason it's difficult is very simple, that, the automotive industry is capital intensive. And if an investor puts in 100 million in a car company, that's only a fraction of what they need. So there's a huge risk they're going to lose all of it because the car company won't, raise the rest of the money. So in this case, we chose a SPAC, or a reverse merger, where we were able to raise $1 billion, which is enough money to get our first vehicle to market because of our business model. And I think that put a lot of investors sort of in a different, they looked at us in a different way, in a less risky way because of that. And of course, it means that you're entering into a company that is a couple of years away from revenue. But the upside is you come in early at a different type of valuation than once you're up and having revenue. And the other upside is that you're not in a private company that has to go out and keep raising money. And I've been there, done that with the original Fisker Automotive. And when you look back of any of the startups that did that, they have always been delayed, because you never know when you raise money how the times are going to be. I don't know what's going to happen next year or in 2 years. And if I then have to rely and go out raising money, there's a huge risk there. So that's why we chose the SPAC. It was a pretty, in my view, a very good process. And I know there's been a lot of different views out there, but in fact, it's a very, I think, comprehensive process with a lot of diligence. You have to go out and show your plans to the public. We've been very open about our plans. We've been open about, we were looking for different platforms with different, both Magna and other OEMs. We're in talk with many different people. We settled with the Magna platform. So we have been pretty out there explaining what we're doing. We've shown our car. We announced, when we hit a certain milestone. You have to be, in my view, very, you have to be very concise and follow a process to make this work. To make it work, because you have a certain amount of money, and you're going to make sure you hit your targets with that money.
Yeah, well, congratulations on being able to pull that off. It's really impressive. And thanks for your time today. You've been very generous with it, and it's been a great discussion here. We're definitely going to have you back on the show, once the car is out there and the like. But once again, Henrik Fisker, thanks again.
Great to be on the show. Good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chase, great having you on the show. We'll definitely have you back. And Gary, you and I will just keep on doing this.
As we will.
Okay. So long, everyone.
See ya.
See ya.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Hyundai, Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.